Well, time moves forward and it brings great change. We know that, of course. And for one man in 21 countries, time is of the essence. This is the home of Kurt Schmidt.
There are different sounds of ticking.
Step inside and you'll hear the pulse.
They're living creatures, if you will, and they have their idiosyncrasies.
And if these classic clocks are indeed creatures, then consider Mr. Schmidt their doctor.
No offense to the doctors, and with all due respect to them, of course, but it does sort of feel that way.
Inside the workshop, the gleaming skeletons of clocks laid bare. Kurt with his tools of the trade, a lathe, magnifiers, and the steady hands of a surgeon.
Exactly.
Millimeter by millimeter, a spin here, a twist over there. He brings his patients back from the dead.
One of the interesting things about doing service calls for people is to walk into their home and they'll have a long case clock, much like this, that isn't working. And when you bring that back to life and you hear that ticking, and it's usually in a central hallway, it becomes the heartbeat of that house.
But for much of Kurt's life, none of this was on his radar.
I'm an airline pilot for American Airlines.
And so the moment this all began for him, the clock stopped for nearly everyone else.
The various airports in the area have already suspended operations.
After 9/11, I got laid off, like a third of all aviation, and not able to find any type of flying job the world over.
But on previous flights, Kurt did pick up an interest in antiques. So, with plenty of time on his hands, he enrolled in a London grad school.
I thought, let's go for this.
And studied
horology, Horology, which is a Latin word for time.
And in time, the newly minted horologist was indeed called back to American Airlines. But to keep his clock-making skills sharp, he set up this workshop at home, and that's when he realized that clockwork and flying across the Atlantic aren't all that different after all.
I start to think about longitude and latitude and the navigation, which is coexisting with time. You wouldn't have the navigation that we have today in airplanes, the GPS and so forth, if you didn't have the timekeeping.
So for this pilot and clockmaker who lives his life according to this sound, what's the biggest takeaway?
It makes me way more conscious and aware of time in general that we have on the earth. God's blessed me with lots of different things to do, and I really appreciate all of those different things and the time to be able to do all of those things.
Reporting from 21 countries with plenty of time to spare, I'm Brien McElhatten. I'll tell you, that story just scratched the surface. He has quite a collection of antique clocks. Some of them you saw there, many others you can see online. And if you'd like to learn more, you can visit our website, WPTA21.com. We'll, of course, point you in the right direction.
Awesome story, Brian. Coming up next.